1997 saw the release of Batman and Robin, starring George Clooney and Chris O'Donnell in the respective roles. What can I say that hasn't already been said about this film? It was a disaster. Batman and Robin was the fourth and last in that particular run of the franchise that started with Tim Burton's Batman in 1989. It was a series that gradually went downhill. As movie writer David S. Goyer said in an old interview featured on the Blade DVD, a successful Marvel superhero movie from 1998, to paraphrase, the Batman franchise disappointed him as they successively got worse with each chapter. He went on to say that hopefully the Blade franchise won't follow suit. Bear in mind the Blade sequels hadn't been made yet, and become toyetic and kiddified. If 5 years down the line they are doing a Blade Happy Meal at McDonald's, there would be trouble. Anyway, I'll just kind of paraphrase what he said there, but I recall thinking, now this is the attitude that it's really going to take to make a really good Batman movie. I specifically recall thinking, oh man, I just hope with the next ones, if or whenever they get made, I just hope that it has as dark a tone as Blade. That was pretty much the standard that at least I held my expectations against. Well, the Blade franchise kind of ended on a low point with the disappointing Blade Trinity in 2014. Now, I do know that that film was directed by David Goyer, but I don't really want to get into that argument right now. The reason I mentioned this, David S. Goyer did actually go on to write the Dark Knight Trilogy, so this is a good example of fans getting involved in terms of actually making the films and having people on board that really know what they're doing with the source material. But it was around about this time, throughout 2004, we saw sneak peeks of what was to come in the spring of 2005 with Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan? Didn't he direct that film that goes backwards? I remember thinking. I recall lots of things going through my mind, to be honest, before and during the year or two leading up to the release of Batman Begins. I was already a big fan of Christian Bale, having seen him in a few films such as Empire of the Sun, Shaft, American Psycho, and the 2003 film Reign of Fire. Now, I knew he was going to bring something slick and different to this role, so I was dead chuffed about it that they'd cast him. Now, one letdown at the time, although in hindsight it was kind of justified. I was really wanting to see the grey bat suit closer to the Jim Lee or perhaps Frank Miller Batman of the comics. In all the other films from 1989 onwards, we'd seen more of a armour-plated, black-coloured Batman suit. Now, I know that what looks good on the comic book page doesn't always translate brilliantly into film, but I just remember seeing the silly but entertaining fan film from 2003 called Batman Dead End. If you haven't seen it, check it out, it's pretty good. Although the costume in this looked a bit Adam West-like, the Batman was played brilliantly by Clark Bartram. He donned the Jim Lee, Frank Miller style cape and cowl, and it just looked something different to what we'd seen before on film. What we got basically with Batman Begins was another tactical armour-plated bat suit for these films. Now, I would say I am happy that in hindsight this did fit the realistic tone of the series, well, as realistic as you can get in a Batman film. So, as I say anyway, throughout 2004 we saw glimpses of things that this film was going to be giving us. For starters, we saw this tank-looking thing. Wait, I'm hearing that tank is going to be the Batmobile? Oh, okay, well, I'm just going to roll with it. Looks cool anyway. Kind of like the Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns Batmobile. Well, as it turned out, it was awesome. It looked cool in the film, and what was good about it was that the manoeuvres and stuff that it did were for real, pretty much. It wasn't kind of pulled along on wires like the Tim Burton one. Now, more cast members were announced, like the Gary Oldman character, which was going to be Commissioner Gordon. Or is it Lieutenant or Sergeant? Oh well, I'm sure he's going to be good. As it turned out, yep, he was. Michael Caine as Alfred, really? I didn't see that, and again, really good. Probably one of the best Alfreds that we've seen. Liam Neeson was to play some guy called Ducard. Didn't really know much more about that, but obviously there's a plot twist. If you haven't seen the film, I won't ruin it. Some Oriental guy as Ra's al Ghul. The guy from 28 Days Later is the Scarecrow. Rutger Hauer is in it too. This film is really lining up as something that could be quite spectacular. Well, later in 2004 anyway, from memory, we got the first teaser trailer with Christian Bale's voiceover where he kind of talks about how he's travel the world after his parents were murdered and so on, and found something truly terrifying in the shadows. And then he kind of goes quiet, and you see it for a split second. What did you see, Bruce? Come on, tell us.
Me.
How cool does that look? You only saw it for a split second, but you know, it was pretty much gave you an idea of what it was going to look like when the film came out. Anyway, into 2005 now, we saw full trailers. Granted, there were a few toys that came out. I even bought a few, as I collect such things, as you'll see. If you go to brandextrareviews.com, you'll see the kind of stuff that I'm into. But this was really a film that could appeal to a more mature audience when it came out. It wasn't just about selling Batman toys to the kids. Now, it's rare that I go see film twice at the cinema, but when this film came out, I went with one of my friends, pretty much on the day of release from memory. But I went later on with a friend of mine called The Core. You may have seen him in some of the Brandex reviews. Went a week or so later as he wanted to go see it as well. So, great film, two great sequels. Now, speaking of The Core anyway, he wants to have a bit of input on this video too, so I'll end this introduction right here, and I think we'll just wing it from this point on.
So yeah, this is our 100th video, and I don't know if you remember, but the first video I ever did was pretty much covering the Dark Knight Trilogy box set that came out on Blu-ray. This was back in October, but I didn't really talk about the films much. I kind of want to get to it on this, and of course we've got The Core here as well.
Hey.
Big fan of these films. So we're just going to talk about each film individually, and then kind of at the end of it talk about what we think of the whole trilogy as a whole. So one thing I kind of liked about this film, I kind of mentioned in the intro, was the Batman suit. I did kind of want it to be a kind of a grey thing, which I know they're going with in the next series with Ben Affleck. We'll see how that works out, but I did kind of like a lot of this. Kind of like the way how it might have been in the background, but it wasn't. I like the cowl and everything on this. Like he's got kind of like they say on the extras when they're talking about it, it's got like a panther-like kind of look to it, which is kind of different. I know they kind of adapted it a little bit in the later films, but it looks more tactical than it was, you know, than we'd ever seen before. A bit more kind of realistic.
And luckily he doesn't have nipples on this bat suit.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of more in keeping with the realistic tone of the Christopher Nolan films. What did you think about that, you know?
The suit never bothered me. I mean, alright, it would be interesting to see a kind of more true to the comic books take on it, but at the same time, I'm not sure how that would look on film, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of ambivalent towards it.
Because I do remember you saying like 10 years ago, you know, like what works on the page doesn't work well in film, kind of thing. So I said in the intro that.
That said, a lot of more recent kind of comic book films have actually managed to do a pretty good job of bringing something a lot closer to the comic books to life on the screen without looking horrible.
Like Captain America.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back as far as like the 90s Captain America, where he was in the proper costume, but he looked absolutely ridiculous.
It was just spandex, basically.
Yeah, but then you've got the more recent Captain America, First Avenger, and Captain America Winter Soldier, where his costume is pretty, you know, it's recognisable to be Captain America, but it looks pretty good.
Kind of tactical and practical as well, I guess. But yes, that's kind of what they went with all these films. I know that the one they had in the later two films was slightly different. It looked even more tactical, but they make a point of that in the film. They don't just say this is his suit. That's what I really liked about these. They kind of explain everything, like his grapple gun and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, don't they have the what do you want in the new suit? I want to be able to turn my neck.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean it's very specific. But a few little things as well that I liked about this, I didn't mention in the intro, was the fact that on all three films as well, they had Hans Zimmer doing the score. He's fairly well known for, you know, like big epic film scores like Gladiator, that kind of thing. And he did all three. The soundtrack albums are pretty good. I might do a review of them at some later point. But visually as well, the film is pretty good. I know that the first one in particular, Christopher Nolan wanted it to have, or certain bits of the film, to have a look of Blade Runner, and I did actually read somewhere that he showed a lot of the kind of people who were making the film. They had a screening of Blade Runner and basically saying, look, this is what I want it to look like, or parts of it. Certainly bits where you've got like the Narrows do have a lot of that kind of thing to it as well. What do you think about that?
Nothing really to add on that one. It's a very striking film, and it is does a good job of not like completely abandoning like its comic book origins, but looking very real world at the same time.
Yeah, because I remember reading Batman Year One and thinking like I read it shortly after I saw the film. I hadn't read it up till that point, and I remember thinking, wow, that's like actually quite close. Certain shots in this film do kind of line up with stuff in that, which obviously was based on.
I know I always like viewed these films as like a new Batman origin, a Year One kind of almost what would happen before like the original films would have started. I mean, not that they're like linked in any way, but this is like the very beginnings of the Batman. If you go back to the Tim Burton Batman, there's like a certain case of like people already know who he is. There's already rumours of the Bat even before he's like around. Whereas in these films, it's very much this is the very first time he puts on the suit. This is the very first time he goes out there and starts doing things. And it certainly is close to the Year One. I've not actually read it myself, but I know scenes like when he uses the like is it sonar device to summon all the bats to like freak the cops out. I know that's like pretty much straight from Year One, and it's a really good scene as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like you say that they kind of like the Tim Burton one. You're absolutely right. You know, you kind of got the impression that it was fairly new to it, but it wasn't. You didn't really know exactly. Had he been around for a year? Was it a month, a week, whatever? And this one is like, you know, a lot more clear. They kind of touched upon the Year One stuff in Batman Forever, but it was flashbacks. So.
Yeah, I mean, the best of like the two like crooks he's chasing on the rooftop are like, oh, the Batman, that's just a rumour, you know.
Yeah.
They say they found him drained of blood. It's like, that's just bullshit. And they're already like the newspapers are geared up towards it. So I got the impression he'd been around a little bit. Just it was the first major thing he'd gone up against. Whereas this is also in some ways it's not him fighting like a big comic book villain. Okay, he goes up against almost like a proto Scarecrow, but I mean he's like Scarecrow, but it's almost like before he becomes Scarecrow, really.
Yeah.
I always got the impression he's not really Scarecrow until he got faced with his own toxins and went mad near the end of the film.
Which was good because he brought it back in later films as well, which I liked.
I mean, to clarify that, he's not like he is Scarecrow, but he's not like Scarecrow like you'd see him in the comics. Yeah. He's still fairly normal. He's just a sadist. You know, if that makes sense, I don't know.
It's basically Christopher Nolan's kind of realistic world adaptation of Batman. So there's lots of things where a lot of fanboys have been like, "Oh, that's rubbish. Batman wouldn't do that." It's like, well, in this incarnation, it does. This one's definitely for more geared at adults, kind of thing. But it was kind of aimed at children in like marketing and stuff. But yeah, it's Batman. It's what you expect. But one thing I want to say as well is the success of this film has pretty much had a big influence, a big impact on reboots, particularly like the James Bond franchise. I think the success of this film, they really, thought, right, we can reboot James Bond basically now. Not in the exact same manner, but it gave a lot of confidence for the reboot thing that they've done ever since. Definitely owes it to Batman Begins specifically. I mean, you could say like Star Wars was like a prequel. It wasn't a reboot, but I think it was this one definitely owed it to things like that, where I think they got overconfident with reboots, to be honest. Like, I mean, kind of crap film as it is, but like Ghost Rider and stuff, like they did a sequel. It was pretty much intended as a reboot, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was even worse than the first attempt.
Yeah, and Spider-Man as well. Obviously, they rebooted that for like financial reasons. But I do remember when we went to see this. I was kind of like taking the piss when we went to the cinema, and just after it like finished, I was like, Spider-Man can just fuck right off, kind of thing. But yeah, and
that was after we'd gone and seen Batman, by the way, not after we'd gone and seen Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. There were other things. I might do reviews at some point. I was going to kind of in this video kind of talk about some of the toys because I did collect them. I kind of mentioned that in the intro, but I think I'll save that for a future review. Now you did used to have the PlayStation 2 game of this. I seem to remember.
I never actually got that far into it.
Yeah, I seem to remember.
I did have it, yes.
It was quite a good one, wasn't it?
I don't know, for some reason I never really got into it. I think not to like slag off the game if you're ever thinking of getting it, but I think it was a case of, I got it around the period that I was just kind of getting bored with console gaming in general. I was more into like PC games. Even though I've still got a PlayStation 3, I just rarely use it for anything other than like DVDs and Netflix and things like that.
Was it PS3 or it was 2, wasn't it? I think 'cause it was 2005, so it would have been.
I honestly can't remember. I remember having it, but I can't remember what platform it was on.
I seem to remember it being like, I mean, I don't think I played it, but I remember watching it thinking it was pretty good.
Yeah, because I seem to remember messing around with it. I seem to remember Tofu was there as well. I think all three is around at my house.
Didn't it go missing shortly after that?
Yeah. Well, I certainly don't have it anymore, so either I sold it or it vanished to fund Tofu's biscuit obsession.
Yeah. If you've seen the other videos, you'll know we've got a friend called Tofu who stole some of our DVDs, so that's where that joke comes from anyway. He did steal computer games at some point as well.
But yeah, basically I do remember there was a game, didn't really get much into it, so I can't really comment on that.
I kind of made some notes here about things I was going to kind of mention. I think that's pretty much everything, the points I was going to make. Just generally, what we kind of talked about what we liked about the film. What could have been better about it? I can't really think of much. I think they did a pretty good job.
No, nothing like immediately jumps to mind with this one. Nothing that I can think of. Like I said, I very liked a lot of the things they did with it. I like the fact that most of the time he's going up against just punks and criminals, and in some ways you get a clear indication that he's kind of working his way up. And when Ra's al Ghul comes out of the shadows, it's like a big oh shit moment.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it at that for this part of it anyway. I mean, obviously we're going to review this in the whole video, but as for Batman Begins, I think that's pretty much it. So we'll just pretty much move on to the next film. So the next film is The Dark Knight, which came out in 2008. So let's have a look at that now.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
So The Dark Knight came out 3 years later, not 4. I think I caught that up before, but yeah, it was 2008, and it was a very highly anticipated film. I think one of the first things we heard about this, obviously we knew Christian Bale was going to be it, but cast-wise, Heath Ledger as the Joker. What was your reaction to that?
Heath Ledger's the Joker?
Exactly.
What the hell?
Exactly.
Isn't he the guy from Brokeback Mountain? Look, Batman shouldn't have to worry about the Joker killing his family. Not about bumming him.
Exactly.
And I'll be the first to admit I was dead wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is something now, because a lot of people reacted that way, and the Heath Ledger being the Joker thing is something that is pretty much like pulled up. Any time there's a casting decision, people always go back to the Heath Ledger, and it's like, well, look, you know, people said about him, and he was perfectly good. I think in hindsight, I mean, I hadn't seen anything with him in. I think I'd seen The Knight's Tale, but I don't think I'd seen it at that point.
I would have seen A Knight's Tale, but to be honest, I forgot that he was in it.
Yeah.
I don't. That was mainly me joking around. I'm not like homophobic or anything before I get any kind of angry comments.
Homophobic.
Homophobic, motherfucker.
You're not afraid of like.
I'm not afraid of hobos.
Well. But yeah, no. So I think it was obviously something. I think the Joker basically is one of these very iconic things, and pretty much was immediately. I don't know if him dying had as much to do with it. I think if he'd have died, it would have made that much difference. I think it was that good at a.
It's a really good performance. I think it also didn't help that a lot of us. I certainly was kind of hooked up on the Jack Nicholson portrayal of the Joker.
You thought that was definitive?
Yeah, kind of. It's certainly the first thing that would have come to mind when I thought about the Joker, like, before seeing this film.
Yeah. It's different. I think you will compare the two, because they are comparable, but I think it's a different way of doing it, basically. Because Jack Nicholson's Joker was just Jack Nicholson, basically, in a lot of ways. Whereas Heath Ledger, I think, really kind of dug deep, you know, to kind of pull this character out. I know as well, like influences on like popular culture basically was a massive thing. I mean, I know that Halloween, 2008 when the film came out, so many people like dressed up as the Joker. I remember there's a rock band that I know, and they were all like dressed up like in their face paint. It was that big of a thing. Everybody, thought it was cool.
I used a couple of Jokers wandering around Comic-Con, and they were definitely the Heath Ledger version.
Exactly. It's one of the things where I kind of dress up on Halloween sometimes when I go out, but it's something that I kind of avoid doing a Joker just because it's literally done to death. But anyway, that aside, anyway, there was something else with the casting of this. They went with Maggie Gyllenhaal, I think I've pronounced that right, as Rachel Dawes. It was Katie Holmes, wasn't it, originally?
Yeah. I think it was basically just she either didn't want to return and reprise the role, or she literally couldn't because of conflicting. Seems to be a similar thing as who else is like that? Some actresses don't seem to like returning.
Portman.
Yeah, that's it.
Thor.
Because she didn't really want to come back and do Thor 2, and I think she
Star
also
Wars.
was. Yeah, well, you can't really blame her with Star Wars,
Yeah,
but
to be fair,
yeah, it's like a weird thing. I have no idea what the hell is going through their mind, unless it's like, I don't want to be typecast, but
yeah.
well, you can either be typecast or your fans can get really pissed off with you because you refuse to return and like reprise a character they really love. So I don't see you going to win either way, to be honest.
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of. Well, I wasn't happy with the fact they cast Katie Holmes originally, just because Dawson's Creek is rubbish. I hate stuff like that. I've never seen her in anything, just the guilt by association. But to be fair, she's a good actress. She was good in the film. Chemistry with her and Christian Bale was good.
To be honest, I've never seen Dawson's Creek. I was barely even aware she was in it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing that she was famous
I'm
for.
more connected to Disturbing Behaviour that I can remember being in with, what's his name, guy who plays Cyclops.
Oh, I know what you mean, yeah, well,
Yeah.
Exactly. I can't remember his name. We are both non-name remember motherfuckers, but I think that's okay, because he's pretty much a nobody anyway. Now, obviously in this one, that was kind of the last film. In this one, they cast her as Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think she's a pretty good actress as well. Looks-wise, they didn't really look all that similar, but I think if
they looked very different. In some ways, I'd say Kate Holmes is a bit prettier in some ways. Or certainly in like a certain
traditional way.
Yeah, in the way that you'd sort of go, oh yeah, she's kind of cute. Whereas
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, it's more like a real world kind of like, yeah, she's, you know, hot.
Kind of thinking man's crumpet, I guess.
Yeah, that would be like a pretty apt way of putting it.
Yeah. Now, obviously, in this one we mentioned the suit in the last film. They kind of updated it a lot in this, and they didn't just kind of roll it out. They just they actually explained why he gets bitten by a dog, basically, don't they? And he says to Lucius Fox, "I need a new suit," and he explains like how the new suit's going to function, less kind of plates and it more so he can kind of move about, but it just means that his body armouring basically is kind of compromised because there's less plates on it.
Yeah.
Which is a point later on because he gets shot, so there's a whole reason for it. It's really good. It's very intricate.
Yeah, it's kind of, is it better to avoid an attack altogether or have the armour to resist the attack but not be able to get out of the way as much? So
it should protect.
Basically, it's like a trade-off. Which way is he going to go, and he goes for manoeuvrability, which actually makes sense because that's kind of
exactly, and that's what Christopher Nolan kind of goes for with these films. Again, it's got the Christopher Nolan signature, which I've noticed in pretty much all of his films. He'll have a moment where somebody will be thinking about something that's happened, so it'll be a flashback, and as they're kind of thinking, you'll see it for like a few seconds to what they're thinking about. They did it all the way through, like Memento, where you haven't seen that, actually. I won't ruin that for you, but actually, no, I can say it's about ruining it. There's like a bit where he has memories, and he'll remember a certain bit where I think it was his wife or his girlfriend, I think it was his wife, he'd like pinch her or something, and that was like significant. He'd be thinking about it, and you'd have it for a split second, or well, not split, a few seconds, where he would do that, and it kept going back to that. And he had it all through the Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, where you get flashbacks for like a few seconds of like his parents getting shot or something. It does it like he did it in Insomnia as well. Where the Al Pacino character shot his partner, or shot that guy. It was his partner, wasn't it? On the mountains. Yeah,
I think it's a partner, or at least somebody he works closely with.
And they'll be kind of reflecting on it, and for like a few seconds, you'll kind of like see his partner like dying, kind of thing, won't you? Does it in nice films. It certainly does it in these as well. So there's a lot of Christopher Nolan signatures to this. Kind of rambling a bit there. Now the reception of this film, it pretty much overshadowed Batman Begins in a lot of ways. I know people that went to see it and watched it a number of times hadn't seen Batman Begins. It was insignificant to them, basically.
Although I do know the build-up to this film, where you got the last scene at the end of the original, where it's like, there's some kind of escalation. We start wearing, vests, they start carrying guns, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you've basically got them holding up a playing card with a Joker's face on it, and you're like, I know where this is going in the next film. Yeah. That's going to be awesome.
What, you figured it out from that?
It was it was a really nice interlude into it, is what I'm saying. It was it got you pumped up for the next film.
Yeah, so it was significant, the first film, but a lot of people just, And I think I was on a conversation with a couple of people at work, and they were saying that compared to the later two films, Batman Begins, they thought it was rubbish. But I'm undecided, even 2 years after the last
I think
film
it's
came out.
just a process. It's like part of the trilogy. I mean,
Yeah.
without that film, you wouldn't have got the other films. And I don't think The Dark Knight would have worked as well without Begins to kind of set it up and build up the characters. And
Yeah.
otherwise, Rachel Dawes would be like somebody you'd hardly even met. You know, why would you give a crap about her?
I kind of think of it as being a lot like the Terminator films, the first two anyway, because I remember the first film and then the second one was coming out, and when it did come out, a lot of people just kind of forgot the first one, wouldn't even like watch it. Like the second one was like so good, it massively overshadowed the first. I think that's what happened here, which is interesting because I know the third James Bond film, Daniel Craig runs Skyfall, the director even said The Dark Knight, the 2008 film, was a massive influence on that, just kind of the way it was done. Which is funny because obviously Batman Begins influenced Casino Royale in terms of rebooting kind of thing. So again, influences on popular culture, influences on future films, again was very much a big thing with these films up to this point especially. What we liked about it, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of that. I didn't see this film in IMAX, you didn't either, did you? I think we went to the cinema to see it together. Although, what we did like when we went to see this in the cinema was those kids that got thrown out. That was quite funny, I do remember that.
Yeah, and they were like, "Way!" Like they'd like won something. We're like,
yeah,
"Hi!"
we weren't doing that for them. It was like, yeah, you just got kicked out from one of the best films.
You wasted a load of money,
yeah,
pissed off an entire room of people, and you're the ones getting chucked out. I don't really see what the victory is.
Exactly. But yeah, I didn't see it in IMAX, but the quality, if you watch it on Blu-ray, is particularly something else, really. Because I know Christopher Nolan's more of a... He would rather do things in IMAX than just do like a sort of general 3D film, basically. He goes for big... The kind of shots and camera angles he does on this as well. Because I did see Dark Knight Rises, and I'll get to that later on, in IMAX, and just film things in such a way that are kind of fit for that format. What could have been better about this film? Two-Face, maybe, I don't know. The way that they dealt with that, we haven't really kind of touched upon that. He wasn't like this big crime lord like he was in the comics, and I know it's not a direct, it's an adaptation kind of thing.
I just think it was a shame that they killed him.
Yeah.
In fact, it's doubly sad and ironic that they kept alive the Joker who
died.
Can't really come and come and redo the role, and they killed off the guy who's,
Yeah.
they could, theoretically.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, because I'd always heard, I don't even know if it was even planned, it was just something I'd heard, that the premise of The Dark Knight was to have the Joker as a bad guy, sets up Two-Face right at the end, kind of like Darth Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And then in the next film, Two-Face is the bad guy and the Joker's kind of on trial or whatever. I don't know if that would have been better than the actual direction they had to go with it ultimately, but it would have been interesting, because I just assumed that Two-Face you were going to see him as Two-Face for like the last scene, and that was like to be continued, but I was actually quite surprised when he had, 20-25 minutes?
Yeah, he does get a bit of screen time. What I liked about it, I did feel that this was basically going back to what I said about Batman Begins. Yeah, you do get the Scarecrow running around. He does sort of have the mask, but he's not really like a full-on costumed villain yet. He's not really the Scarecrow that you would see in the comics. Not really. And Ra's al Ghul is a very real-world version of him. He's not really like... he's not his costumed counterpart that you'd see in the comics. In some ways, this film was the first time you got Batman going up against somebody that was like him, somebody who was larger than life, if you like, in the form of the Joker.
They hinted at the spiritual as well with Ra's al Ghul, didn't they?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, in some ways it wasn't like, I'd really class Ra's al Ghul as like a full-on supervillain in some ways.
Yeah.
How he was presented in the film.
Grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Because I liked what they did about it in the first one, I'm kind of going back a bit, but they kind of continued that in this with... It was open to interpretation, where like Ra's al Ghul, it was like, is he supernatural or is it just a cheap parlor trick kind of thing? You can kind of throw that into it. because again they just kind of grounded in reality. I think they kind of continued that in The Dark Knight. Yeah, just The Dark Knight. Really, with
also Joker's one of the best villains to kind of do that with, that's grounded in reality, because he isn't a mutant, he isn't pumped up on some kind of super drug, he's just literally
insane.
Yeah. You know, he's not this ancient guy who's basically immortal and keeps getting resurrected.
Like the Mandarin or something.
Well, I was going to say Ra's al Ghul in the comics.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry I interrupted you, so.
Some men just want to watch the world burn. But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of anything that could have been better. I mean, I don't know if the Two-Face thing, if they would have done that better. I don't know if it would have worked as well, to be honest. I mean, I don't think they planned on doing a lot of films with this. I think it was a trilogy, so screen time wise, to have had Two Faces as some big crime lord and like a big long story to him, I think that probably would have been dragging it out a bit at the cost of other characters. Because if they'd have done that in the third film, there would have been no Bane, there would have been all that stuff. So
I certainly wish that the character had survived the end of the film. As a comic book fan, it is a bit of a irritation of mine when they seem to feel the need to kill off the villain at the end of the film, when it's like a recurring comic book character that you know this guy should be fighting for most of his career. They could have just as easily had him arrest the Joker. Arrest Two-Face rather than kill him. Just like, in some ways I didn't really mind it as much in Batman Begins, because it's Ra's al Ghul, you can bring him back from that technically. Although you would have to then move into the it's supernatural.
yeah, well, they kind of did that in the third film. But I'll get into that when we go there. I think, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that could say they would have done that could have done better. Really, I mean, it's pretty much one of the highly
It would have
regarded.
been nice if they could have kept Rachel Dawes kind of consistent between both films. I'm not necessarily saying I would have liked it better if they brought back Katie Holmes, but it might have been better if they'd had what was the name again?
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, Maggie Gyllenhaal in the first one, maybe. Just basically keep the character consistent between the two films, because she's the only actress that changed. Everyone else basically stayed the same throughout the films.
Yeah, I mean, it happens.
But it happens. It's not something I would like hold up as like betrayal or anything. It's just, if we're going to say things that could have been better, then that maybe could have been.
Yeah. But I didn't know if they were going to do a sequel to this point. I didn't know if like Heath Ledger dying kind of thing had kind of derailed what they'd planned, but it was another 4 years before they did the next film, so they will move on then anyway. Yeah. Dark Knight Rises, 2012, 4 years later.
Right, we're going to talk about The Dark Knight Rises now. What do you think about it? What the hell are you wearing? Look, take the stupid thing off. I can't understand a word you damn well saying.
I thought it was really good. How can you not tell what I'm saying just for the mask on? Yeah, awesome film. I, again, really don't know which film of this trilogy I like the most. There's just little things in each one.
For me, I just put them together as like, they are a trilogy, they work together. I like them all individually, and together they're just better.
Yeah.
It's a film that gets a lot of flack from some people, does this one, like how crap it is. I don't see it at all.
Yeah, I could understand if somebody felt missold by the trailer for this, and I agree with that, but I don't think it is a negative. I just think the film kind of sold it as like The Dark Knight with lots of action and really fast-paced. When it's not really, it's kind of more sort of like a psychological thriller in a lot of ways. I mean, not in a kind of traditional sense, but it's kind of comic book world. But yeah, I can see if you went into it expecting The Dark Knight, you're going to be let down, because Batman's pretty much out of action for like 45 minutes at one stage.
Yeah, it's like an odd kind of cross between two different Batman stories is this one. Nolan'S Land, where like Gotham gets wrecked by an earthquake, and Nightfall, where Bane breaks Batman's back, and basically he's in Batman for a while.
I will break you.
He has to fight his way back from like nothing to be the Batman again.
Yeah, I mean that is literally the case. I know I mentioned in Batman Begins they'd used Blade Runner as visually the kind of all these parts of the film that they wanted to go off. Second film was Heat, the Michael Mann film with De Niro and Al Pacino.
Just something else I desperately need to see
That
one
is
of these
a good
days.
film. Yeah, that is definitely a good film. You can definitely see that as well. I think this one, I haven't really read anywhere what they based it on, but my opinion is they just basically based the look of this on the first two films. You definitely get a sense of that. You kind of think, well, is it close to Batman Begins because it's got like the whole Ra's al Ghul League of Shadows thing? But then again, it continues.
I would say there's like a certainly consistent look throughout the three films. It's not like what would you call the original Batman series? It's like 4 films. Is it like Legacy,
Quadrilogy.
In some ways, the looks changed radically between those films. Kind of going from kind of real world with like a weird Art Nouveau kind of like timeless feel to it to gaudy Day-Glo toys like they were in the last one.
Like Joel Schumacher influence.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because Joel Schumacher is a really good film director, and you would have you could see it coming, him directing the Batman films, because he did like Lost Boys, and there's a lot of there's like Batman references here and there. Christopher Nolan, you wouldn't have watched Memento and thought Batman film director, which is ironic because in a lot of people's opinions he's like the best one today. I mean, a lot of people like the Tim Burton ones. I can see where you're coming from. I like them, but I mean they prefer them to these. So yeah, no, all good points. And I did go to see this in IMAX, and I was lucky because we live in a place, and the nearest IMAX to us is Bradford, and it's really bad for showing films when they come out. A massive film will come out, and they will show films about deep sea diving, and not the film. In this case, they did show it, so quite
What
lucky.
film were we looking recently when we went to see?
There's been a lot of I know I think Star Trek Into Darkness we were going to go see. I think Godzilla as well. I think was the other one.
I think Godzilla must have been the one we were looking at, because I was like, well, that's a really big like film, it's got to be in IMAX, right? No, they're going to show some like documentary and some foreign films and something about a track across the Gobi Desert. It's like, look, I can kind of understand you like a TV museum, so you obviously want to be like educational, but you could show educational things and you could show popular things. It's not either or.
Exactly. But it was a really good film. And again, like I say, with the Dark Knight, it was definitely filmed in such a way that was kind of really best watched in IMAX. But it's to the degree where
I think I must have seen it sometime later, because I didn't see it. I just saw it at the normal cinema.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if anything else comes out, because you haven't really seen any films at IMAX, I don't think, have you, like, properly?
No, I haven't actually seen anything.
Well, definitely. If they show anything there again, we will make
a
point of that.
Big if.
I'll just have to go like, wherever else they're showing, like Sheffield or something.
Yeah, we'll have to find out another place that does like an IMAX and sack Bradford off.
Yeah. But that aside, anyway, moving on. Casting decisions. Tom Hardy, awesome, really good. He'd worked with Christopher Nolan on Inception previously. I think Christopher Nolan's a guy who likes to reuse a lot of actors. Now,
which I guess makes sense, because if you know what somebody's capable of providing for you and you know you can work with them, it makes sense to go there again, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of
I know
fans like it.
other directors that kind of like that.
John Carpenter, for example.
Yeah.
But one
also
thing that gets...
Sam Raimi, I think he tends to
Yeah,
a lot
like Bruce Campbell, yeah. There's lots of examples. But I think one of the things that gets pulled up by fans is the Anne Hathaway character. She played Selina Kyle. Never referred to as Catwoman, though, is she? But they did
it's clear she's meant to be, though, but...
yeah.
I think that was just... Didn't want the negative association with the god-awful Catwoman movie.
Yeah, I never thought that.
Which I have actually seen.
Right, okay.
I didn't go to the cinema and see it. I didn't rent it.
Did you pay money to watch it?
No, I watched it on, I think it was Film 4 or something.
Right, okay.
When I was bored and I literally had it in the background, my God, was that film dire.
Who was it aimed at? It wasn't aimed at the fans.
Yeah.
It wasn't aimed at people who just general film goers.
I think people with some kind of
allegedly
brain damage and an overwhelming desire to jerk off over
Halle Berry
in like a really skanky Catwoman outfit.
Wasn't Sharon Stone in it as well?
Yeah, she was the main bad guy and she was equally rubbish.
Yeah. Bad, yes. Guy, no. So that's a Batman and Robin quote. I'm going to talk about Poison Ivy. But yeah, no... there's a pretty good Nostalgia Critic review of that, actually. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I've actually.
Yeah, pretty funny.
But yeah, absolutely awful. I would say she went a long way towards redeeming the character.
Yeah, I liked her. It's criticised. I mean, I was just going to say, like, it's something that a lot of people pulled up. I think there's a question, was she really necessary in this film? Maybe not. It's arguable that they could have written her out, but she had a part to play.
I don't think so, because she was kind of like involved like most of the steps along the way. She's the person who kind of lures Batman out of kind of his self-imposed kind of exile and so forth.
Gets his like fingerprints and stuff, which is part of the plan. So yeah, I think she was necessary. I mean, it's a long film.
Basically, if you didn't have Selina Kyle, you'd have to have some other thief character. And you'd probably end up having to have some other thief character who's also a femme fatale. So at that point, why the hell aren't you just using Selina Kyle?
And the same people that bitched about having her in the film would have bitched, why didn't they just use Catwoman? Yeah, so...
Yeah, you can't win with some people.
I did like the fact that even though they kind of strayed away, no pun there with the word stray, they kind of strayed away from having Catwoman, yet they managed to keep like the ears and the goggles and stuff, and it was done in such a way they kind of like folded up. They served a purpose again, keeping with the real world feel. Everything
again with the feeling of Scarecrow in the first film. I could see her going on from here and eventually growing into Catwoman.
Yeah, it'd probably be a damn sight better than what they're going to do with that Gotham TV series, which is just weird. But we'll see. We'll save that for another review when it comes out. But just for now.
Well, maybe at the very end we'll talk about what's next for the Batman
franchise. Yeah, maybe. Officer Blake as Robin. That was one kind of thing. I don't know if I'm happy with that. He doesn't immediately like think, oh, that's a lot of rubbish. But
I don't really know why they didn't just call him Tim Drake or.
Well, they wanted it as a surprise, but it's a weird surprise. It's like,
because he's not any of the Robins, basically.
Yeah, it's like he's either
he's
one
not
or the
Tim
other.
Drake, he's not
Jason Todd.
Yeah, or
Dick
Grayson. He's none of the classic. He's not the most recent one, he's not the kind of edgy one that died, he's not the classic one that goes on to be like Nightwing in his own character. I don't know where the hell they came from with this or where they were going, and why they didn't just have him be like... I mean, they could have got away with just having him as be like Officer Drake or something, because...
Blake.
I think...
Non-name, remember?
Drake!
It's Blake. He's Blake. The character's name is Blake. Oh, you mean
no, Tim Drake, you fool!
You said Officer Drake. Alright.
Well, no, I'm saying, why didn't they just have him be Officer Drake? Because I don't think enough people
maybe they were
would...
non-name remembering motherfuckers.
True.
Right.
No, basically what I was getting at is I don't really see why they didn't just have him be Officer Tim Drake. Because I think quite a few people who aren't into Batman heavily would like just...
Not picked up on
Yeah, if it's not Dick Grayson, they wouldn't have got it. Or they could have got away with Jason Todd, they could have got away with the Officer Todd, although that might be a bit more obvious, because he's a bit more in the public kind of mindset, I think.
Yeah, because I know when they unveiled Talia as the sort of female bad guy, a lot of people would have been like, who? I mean, I'm not a massive Batman fan, but I know who she is.
Yeah, I knew who she was, even though I didn't really know much about the Ra's al Ghul thing, but I knew she was like one of his villainous love interests, kind of like Catwoman, but a bit more kind of evil.
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of weird stuff they did with this. It's hard to tell what was studios meddling. Did they just throw out, oh no, we want a Robin in there, and they're like, well, how can we fit Robin into this? And it's like, obviously Blake is going to be Robin. It's kind of bullshit, but we'll just throw it out there. I left the film, the cinema, kind of scratching my head a bit, but it is what it is at the end of the day. It's still a good film. It's confusing. Robin should be alongside Batman. Does he go on to be Robin on his own? How is that possible? Because
is he taking over as the new Batman?
Yeah, it's like, what the hell? There was some talk for a while that the Man of Steel franchise, what I hope, because written by David S. Goyer as well, they thought they might kind of continue the Officer Blake character Robin as the new Batman alongside Superman in that. There was a lot of people were kind of talking about that.
Yeah, but they basically just put their foot down on that and definitively there's going to be no connection.
Yeah, so, but kind of weird how they did it, but Bane as well, anyway, I kind of mentioned that before about a lot of people had problems with his voice, not being able to tell what he was saying. I didn't really...
I was able to follow. I'm crap with accents and kind of distorted voices in any way, but I could understand him fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't find his voice took me out of the film or anything it sounds really stupid for the character. He sold it to me as Bane pretty easily.
And I know they edited it in afterwards, and in certain ways, I don't buy that sound is coming out of his mouth. But it kind of, on that level, it kind of makes it a bit more creepy though, because it's kind of like a voice which like kind of comes out of nowhere. You'd be like, what the hell? I don't know. It's kind of funny, you know. It's been parodied a lot. Like you kind of mentioned off camera before, the Batman voice as a whole. I mean, generally speak to that. Just have a go about that.
Basically, that was one of the things that's often lampooned is like, I'm the Batman, and like how stupid that voice is. But I really don't get it myself. It's not necessarily a definitive fact of the character that you would have to have from now on, but it worked fine for what they were doing. It worked for the real world thing for the very simple reason. You got to remember, Bruce Wayne is like a public figure. People interact with him. He's like, presumably does interviews and things. Okay, he's not a music star or a rock star, but he's still like a public figure. People hear his voice. Commissioner Gordon like talks to the guy. So if he just had the exact same voice as Batman, you'd be kind of, hang on a minute. Something's a bit odd here. So the fact that he's disguising his voice actually makes a lot of sense. I think that's the way I view it. I don't really see what the problem is.
I know a lot of people who have said, I don't like Dark Knight, the second film, because of Batman's voice in it. They just said that ruined it. It's like, what, really? It's like, I don't see it. If nobody had a problem with it, it would never occur to me that it was like silly. I mean, he's Batman at the end of the day, you know.
I'm like, oh, well, if you had that voice, it wouldn't intimidate me at all. It's like, I'm pretty sure if you like dragged you up the side of a building by your foot, had you on the end of a rope and was dangling over like a street, I'm pretty sure you'd been intimidated, even if he was doing some kind of like really stupid voice.
Yeah, because I mean the way I see it is this is like a big pissed off Batman. You know, it's not like the George Clooney. This is why Superman works alone kind of thing. I mean, I know it's a bad example of a Batman, but I mean even Michael Keaton, he wasn't sort of really sort of like I'm Batman. It was more kind of. A bit more chilled out, but it's still recognisable, like you say. It wasn't.
Then again, he didn't really talk that much to the people he was fighting. He kept his like dialogue pretty minimalistic when he was the Batman.
It just kind of I want you to tell your friends about me, kind of Clint Eastwood almost, you know.
So even then, you get the impression he was like hiding his voice to a limited degree.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I want you to tell your friends about me, kind of thing. So well, I don't see a problem. You know, it is what it is. Again, I know I've used that phrase a lot, but it doesn't bother me. What we liked about this film, I think we've kind of gone through that already.
Like I said, I really like the way they. Based in the comics, I haven't actually read all of Nolan'S, but I am kind of familiar with how it was working, and I think the way they did it in the film was much better than the way it happened in the comic. Because in the comic, it was very much. From what I could understand of it as, I just could not get my head around like why they would just like abandon Gotham and all these people living there. It didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I know there was some villain with some kind of like power to manipulate people, but it was very much seriously they're just going to like walk away in a major city and like turn it into basically the New York from Escape from New York. Like what the hell? In the film, however, I did actually buy we've got a bomb. You stay out or else we're going to blow it up and we'll take out whoever comes in to get us. All the people here, you know, basically they don't have a choice but to go along with what he's saying. Which I think is a pretty good setup for the like no man's land kind of concept.
You kind of buy it. I mean, if you nitpick at any film really, you know, you can kind of say, oh, I don't buy it, I don't like it.
Out of all the films, this is probably the least grounded in the real world that it's gotten.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is still pretty grounded.
I like what they did with Ra's al Ghul. I kind of mentioned before in like the previous thing about how you kind of pick and choose as to whether he is a spiritual person or whether it's just parlour tricks. In this one, they did a similar thing where he kind of appears to Bruce Wayne, but was he really appearing as a ghost, or was it just his, you know, was it kind of that his brain's way of kind of figuring out who he is, that he's behind it? Was it just his imagination, basically? It's quite good because you can choose, is this a film franchise where the paranormal exists or isn't it? It's quite clever, I like that. So that's what I liked about it.
Also, Bane, they kind of did away with the whole concept of Venom. However, they did keep the fact that he's not just dumb muscle. And in the comics, Bane isn't dumb muscle. The whole reason he manages to break the bat, his like thing he's famous for, is that he's smart. He like plans. He's not like a genius, but he sets Batman up. You know, he weakens him. He wears him out. He attacks like at just the right moment. He's not just like a thug.
He blows up Arkham Asylum, doesn't he, and basically
frees all the inmates. So Batman already like coming down like a really nasty case of the flu, has to like fight all these different like inmates and stuff. And by the time he gets home, he's literally like dead on his feet. And then Bane just pops up out of nowhere and just like takes him out.
Breaks him literally. And they kept that. That was quite good. I didn't know if they were going to do that literally like over the knee kind of thing. So this is definitely a film where I'm glad I didn't read spoilers and stuff before, because a lot of surprises in it. The Bane thing as well. I kind of mentioned the Joker in the previous one. I had like influences on popular culture. Probably. Maybe not quite as much. Bane, I know, gets compared to the Joker. Like, was he better? Was it a better performance? That kind of thing. I think I prefer Bane to the Joker, to be honest. In the films, I mean, the Christopher Nolan version, I think I just prefer him. It had more of an impact on me. It's kind of left more of an impression. It's kind of hard to describe.
I think I go the other way. Because I jokingly give Heath Ledger a lot of crap before, like, I saw him as the Joker, but he pretty much told me that is like now what I would hold as the benchmark for like the definitive Joker, really.
Yeah. But I mean, it's something that.
Whereas I'm not really so sure that I would hold this as the benchmark for the definitive Bane.
Yeah, I can see it being done differently, perhaps better, because the mask in particular isn't really what we've seen in the comics tradition. Well, I don't think there's. I think it was always just like a covered all.
Yeah, it was like a Mexican wrestler's mask.
Yeah. So it was. I remember first seeing it when they released like pictures of it, kind of thing. It was like late 2010, I think it was, about 18 months before the film came out, anyway. And thinking like, whoa, that's really different. It was just a picture of him like sort of from like his back, like from behind. But yeah, he didn't have like put on some weight for this film anyway. But things he could have done better. I don't know. It's argumentative, really.
Yeah. One thing I had against this film, which I think might have like confused a lot of people, is the previous films up to this point had very much a Batman Year One. This is his origin story. This is how he begins, literally, in Batman Begins. But this is like very early in his career, and then suddenly you are at the end of Batman's career. He's broken. He can't walk without a cane and stuff. He's got like serious like issues. And that kind of really threw me, because it's like, what, have we missed like a couple of films here? Because we seem to have jumped pretty radically forward. And I know it like placed the real world thing that if you were doing everything that Batman was doing, your body would be screwed.
Within a year.
Yeah, but at the same time, the timeline kind of confused me and threw me a bit, and it was a bit, well, why the hell is he, suddenly like so screwed up? He was fine last film we saw him, because he was like, they can chase me, I can deal with it.
Yeah.
Running off into the shadows, and then next film he's like a shut in at Wayne Manor. What the hell's going on?
I think it's 8 years after as well. So basically, Batman's only like seen a year's worth of like street action, and that was between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. And then after that, whatever damage done its toll, it obviously took time for it to kind of build up. Even when he was out of action. But it's funny you should say that as well. You say you felt like you'd missed a film, because the guy I went to see this film with, I remember him turning to me when we saw it, because he didn't know much about it, we hadn't read a lot about it. He was like, is this whole beginning bit, the bit like at Wayne Manor when they're all having that big party, is this bit set after the events of the film? Are they going to flash back?
Yeah.
Like, how come like Bruce Wayne's like crippled? How the hell is he going to do all the stuff we've seen in the trailer? Yeah. It was a bit like that. I think they were just going for the Dark Knight Returns thing though, where it's like it's an old Batman, and this is his kind of like last,
Yeah, also something else that I had a bit of a problem with, and a lot of other people did, is the concept that at the end Batman is hanging up his cape and like moving on.
I had a problem with that.
Which is basically just not the Batman.
Yeah. Was it what's that, the website, the one where they do the reviews in the car at the end, they did like midnight screenings?
Cinema Snob.
Yeah.
Brad Jones.
That's it. Yeah, I remember it was one of their guys who was like, bullshit, Batman doesn't quit, kind of thing. And I felt the same way, to be honest.
I mean, the only time I've actually bought a Batman who has quit was Batman Begins, the kind of set up to that, where you actually find out that the only reason Batman stepped down from being Batman is he had a weak heart, and he got into like an altercation with a thug he should have wiped the floor with, bit his heart, like knocked him to his knees.
You mean Batman Beyond?
Batman Beyond.
Yeah, Batman the Future.
Basically, he just has to go for a gun to like even it up, and he suddenly realised this all started for me because a scared man with a gun shot my parents, and right now I've just been a scared man with a gun and I was ready to shoot that guy.
Yeah.
And that's why he steps away. He's not willing to be Batman anymore, and that I could kind of buy in this. It's like you've come back, you've overcome being broken, you've climbed out of the pit. I don't really see why you're giving up now.
Yeah. It was a good series, Batman Beyond. Was it called Batman Beyond or Batman of the Future?
I think it was called both.
Yeah. But interestingly, actually, they took the logo from that pretty much, and that was the logo they went with for the Dark Knight trilogy. It was red, I think, wasn't it?
Something interesting I would actually be interested to see if they could ever bring it to film, because it was a very interesting...
live action
yeah.
film, yeah.
Basically, if you have no idea what Batman Beyond is, basically Batman the Animated Series ran for quite a while. They had like a very big animated universe, and basically that was like a direct spin-off from that, which it was so good it even spawned its own comic book series,
Yeah.
where basically you have Batman handing over the torch of basically being Batman, because at this point he's so old, he's like dodging around in a cane, he's got grey hair, he's basically past the point where he can be Batman, and he hands it over to like a new...
Terry McGinnis.
Yeah, basically like a new generation to continue the fight of being Batman. And Terry McGinnis is like a very different Batman. He's more like Nightwing in a lot of ways, because he's less intimidation and more like fighting and so forth.
And he's a young guy. He's at school,
Yeah.
not college, basically. So, but yeah, very very good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good series. I'd strongly recommend it if you're into like the animated kind of things. But off topic of that.
Yeah, we'll leave it anyway. One thing I just want to say overall, and this is something I've asked myself a lot: would I have liked this as a kid if this came out around about the sort of Batman Forever era? So like, if this had come out in '95 when we were like 13, 14, would we have liked it like we do now? Would we have liked it as much, or would we have been like disappointed? Would we have been bored? What do you think?
I think it's hard to judge for me personally. I think I would have liked it, but it's kind of hard to be sure.
Yeah.
Because I've seen films that I watched when I was a kid and absolutely hated, and I watched them again and realised they were actually quite good.
Yeah.
They've grown on me considerably as I've grown older.
Well, two films like that, which were two films influences, Blade Runner and Heat, I saw them when I was quite a bit younger, and I didn't like them at all. I've watched them since, and Blade Runner not so much. It's alright, but Heat is an awesome film, and I watched that when I was a lot younger. I was like a teenager, didn't like it, thought it was boring as hell, just didn't get it. But I got it, but I didn't kind of vibe with it. So I don't know if I would have liked this. I think I would have probably just preferred the kind of dumber, not Batman and Robin, but like, the '89 one and the...
Yeah, I guess if it came down to like, if, bizarrely enough, the Tim Burton Batman and Batman Begins were released on the same year back, and we saw them as like kids, I would probably prefer the Tim Burton one as a kid.
More fun kind of thing.
But I still think I would have liked this if I'd seen it as a kid. But like I say, it's hard to judge because in a lot of ways you don't really feel like you've changed that much, but you probably have.
Yeah,
so.
well, yeah, exactly. Anyway, we'll cut all the stuff there because we'll probably ramble on all day about that.
Yeah, and it's getting late.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is the 100th video. You may or may not know if you're familiar with our reviews. It started back in October with a review of this, the Dark Knight Trilogy Blu-ray, the special edition that came out. I didn't do it with an intention of doing more videos, but it was fairly popular on Facebook with some of my friends, so they just said, well, you should do some more videos. So
Yeah, this is number 100, isn't it?
yeah, that's why I pretty much decided
Well, hey,
for 100th we'll do it as a proper retrospective. We've kind of rambled on a bit, sorry if you've bored anyone here, but shout out to Paul Cage, big fan of ours. Anyway, that's a review anyway, so we'll be following other stuff at brandnexreviews.com, that's this website right here. And
brandnex.com, that's another
as
site.
it got referred to previously, yeah. But we'll leave it there anyway. Thank you very much for watching.